Hi, folks. Ryan Honeyman here from Lyft Economy. Many folks have come to us over the last 10 years and asked, how do I get more involved in creating an economy that works for the benefit of all life? They also ask, what skills and experiences do I need to help make this transition? So, 3 years ago, we created something called the Next Economy MBA to help address this and similar questions. Lyft Economy's Next Economy MBA is an online course that's designed for entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, students, recent graduates, employees, and folks who want to learn more about transformational next economy strategies and businesses. Join the growing alumni network of nearly 250 alumni who've gone through this program and learned essential skills and hopefully built lifelong relationships for catalyzing businesses in the emergent and regenerative economy. So we encourage you to check out our course. You can go to lifteconomy.com/MBA. The next course, Cohort 7, starts on September 21st, 2021. So once again, go to www.lifteconomy.com/MBA. And now, on with the show. Welcome to Next Economy Now. The goal of this podcast series is to highlight the leaders who are taking a regenerative, bioregional, equitable, democratic, racially just, and whole systems approach to creating the new economy. Mike, welcome to the show.
Ryan, thanks for having me.
If someone's at a dinner party and says, Mike, what do you do? How do you answer that question?
Yeah, just get right into it. It's not the easiest answer for a company like Greyston in that, first and foremost, we have a bakery that makes brownies for one of the greatest brands in the world, Ben and Jerry's. But what we're most well known for is our open hiring model, where we hire anyone that comes to the front door of the bakery. So usually when I start like that at a cocktail party, it really gets the conversation going.
That's fantastic. And yeah, like one of the Greyston Bakery, many people may know it as the chocolate fudge brownies in Ben and Jerry's chocolate fudge brownie ice cream. But looking on the website, some interesting explanation of Greyston, which says an integrated network of programs providing jobs, workforce development, low-income housing, supportive services, childcare, after-school programs, tenant services, and community gardens. So that might completely shock the other person at the dinner party.
Right. Usually the next question is, "Oh, really? So then what else do you do?" And it gets into that. But the mission and kind of the entirety of Greyston's goal is to address poverty, and we do it through the job. But then, what are the other levers that people need to not just have employment, but to become thriving members of the community? And that's where those additional programs come into play. So that the child care and the affordable housing, the community gardens, those items you mentioned, are all ways that we're trying to say, okay, if you have employment and you're working hard, what else do you need to go beyond that and become a real contributor in the community? So the part that many people don't know about Greyston and the bakery is that all of the profits from the bakery go to support those other services at Greyston.
Got it. And so the program itself, all those services, are they fully funded by the profits from Greyston Bakery? Is there any sort of nonprofit donations or government subsidization?
There is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So at the core, Greyston is a true hybrid organization. The parent is a 501c3, and so we've got quite a varied revenue stream. So there's the components that come from the bakery, but then we also have grants, other earned revenue models within the nonprofit, and a philanthropy piece as well. That's very important.
Great. And so what's your, before we launch into Greyston on a deeper level, how did you hear about Greyston? I read a little bit that you had a past in internet startups. So, what was your transition into, leading a Bakers for Good mission?
Yeah, it's another good story in that like many people, I had a pretty lengthy career doing one thing that I had decided I really wanted to change and contribute more to things that I valued. And along that same time, I was given a brownie as a gift. And product with purpose, it has a real power, and I'm a believer in that. And I saw the brownie and heard about this amazing visionary, Bernie Glassman, and Greyston is 20 minutes outside of Manhattan, where I was living at the time, and so I called up and volunteered. And then from there, I had a role on the board and various other positions, and now I feel quite fortunate to be leading Greyston forward at a time where I think there's great opportunity for an organization like ours.
Fantastic. So one of the pieces that I think many listeners, in particular many B Corps and social enterprises, are interested in is this idea of how do you hire people from traditionally disadvantaged backgrounds or chronic barriers to employment. So former drug and alcohol addiction, former homelessness, poverty. So how has the open hiring program, how does it address that?
Yeah, well, certainly on the face of it, open hiring is pretty simple. You come into the bakery and we have a list, and you put your name on the list, and when we have a job available, we just take people's names right off the list, and we give them an opportunity. And that kind of is a remnant of Bernie's vision all along, which is based on non-judgment and really our focus on what people are capable of in the future. Obviously, there's a lot that then goes into our process of onboarding people, getting them trained. We're making world-class products for some of the greatest brands in the world, so we have some of the toughest food safety and food defense programs at the bakery. So we've got a pretty extensive training and apprenticeship program that take people that have never worked before and make them, major contributors on our production line.
Great. So maybe walk me through, just for the benefit of me and other listeners. So I imagine I'm an applicant. I come in, I put my name on a list, and it's the first day. You call me and say, "Hey, come on in. We've got something for you." And I walk in the front door. Like, what's sort of the process that you guys start out with?
Yeah, and that's where you get to running a social enterprise and the real joy in day to day that you get to see, which is those team members will come in and they'll sit down at a table expecting, or really actually not knowing what to expect, despite having been told, "Hey, you have an opportunity and we want to hire you and bring you on." There's still this thought that there's going to be an interview or there's going to be some type of filtering process. So what happens is people come in and we explain that this is a job now and these are the responsibilities that you have and that it's your job to keep. And these are the expectations. This is what needs to happen, and it runs the gamut from the way typical food safety things around the way you wear your uniform and work with the product, to the way you interact with your other team members, to the importance of showing up on time, and all of the things that then we empower people to be successful on the job, but we also explain that there's expectations, and from there, then the training just gets more and more detailed into what roles people may have and how they are going to be successul on the factory floor.
And is there an orientation process for folks, or they kind of immediately start working?
Oh, no. A couple days. Well, there's what we call the initial orientation, which is a day, and then there's training in a conference room, which is a couple days, and then there's on the floor training, which can vary. And then after that, people are put into roles where they'll shadow people and get comfortable with what the role may be, and then they're given their shift work.
Right. And if to things like, for example, if I have a child, or say I'm currently addicted to heroin, like how does your system address those needs?
Yeah, that is the easiest way to explain is how would other organizations address it as well. And if people have an addiction issue, when they come in, they're told that they need to get it addressed, and that will help them get it addressed. But we won't be employing them at that time. But now they are part of the Greyston family, and these are the services we offer to help people deal with addiction. And if they attempt to come to work under anything but 100% fit for duty stance, then they'll be immediately dismissed. And so they get the same type of EAP support that many businesses offer. It's just the clarity of the importance of asking for it and being proactive. Childcare, much the same, although you don't need to work at the bakery to take advantage of our childcare. So one of the pieces that wasn't naturally apparent in what we've talked about is that when people come and they put their name on the list, we also share the other services that are available to people in Southwest Yonkers, whether or not they're at the bakery. And that could be our affordable child care program that would potentially let people find a good solution for child care and then go look for a job elsewhere. But if they haven't, or if they have a need for child care when they are starting at the bakery, then we can help them through our own program.
Great. That was actually helpful for me to hear the distinction. For some reason, I would hear open hiring, and the thought might be, well, that means that some of the standards maybe are more lax. For example, I could I could have a drinking problem while I'm working at Greyston, but I think it's actually, you're saying open hiring is assuming that person is fully fit for duty, kind of square one, or you can refer them to existing services. Is that kind of?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And even after having done this for as many years as I have, you get back to the cocktail party, and I'm not sure what to say first. But the facility is a world-class facility, and if you've been into food manufacturing production plants, you wouldn't notice anything different from ours than anyone else's. It is a place of business, and first and foremost, I think that's key to what Greyston does, is we make great product. We also happen to do it with people that many others would consider unemployable, but in fact they're not, and they make great product, but we don't cut corners on the type of worker we have in any way.
Right. Yeah, that's a great distinction. Is it still the product? It's not. There's no compromise in other areas. It's simply giving people an extra chance, which I think is, in many ways, the B Corp movement has faced a little bit, which is, oh, aren't you just sort of a nonprofit? Aren't you a worse business because you do good? So how do you kind of address that piece?
Yeah, and I say no, we're a better business, but we start with a world-class product. And then from there, we go to a world-class story, which builds around a inclusive workplace. And using that inclusive workplace, I'm able to compete better on my business component of making great baked goods by saying, hey, consumers want to buy from me. People want me in the supply chain. And I'm able to say, work with Greyston, don't work with these other bakeries, because I have this really great model. And from that, we're going to be more successful together.
Right. Which has worked really well with Ben & Jerry's. And who are some of the other partners that you guys work with?
Yep, so we're really excited with a partnership that now it's got some real traction behind it, but with Whole Foods. And it's more around our own retail product. And then to get to that same mindset, which is the brownie is delicious and it's great, and people are buying it one time after time, not because of this, cutting-edge social innovation model we have, but because the brownie tastes great. Now, whether the first time they heard about Greyston or when they picked up the packaging, they said, well, this is a good company, one I want to support, I don't think we'd be able to continue to sell the kind of brownies we do through Whole Foods without it being a great product. And Whole Foods believes in it as well. So that's been a really strong partnership. And then we've got a whole contract manufacturing line of business where we're making products for other people, and they don't even bother to promote our brand specifically with theirs, but they're just happy to work with us because they know they're generating jobs and kind of infusing their own business with a social mission by collaborating with Greyston.
Yeah, I must say that you sort of altered my perception of reality when I tried a Blondie brownie, because I'm so used to having just a standard brownie. I was completely thrown by how amazing those are.
Thank you. Yes, I would be I wouldn't be wearing my sales hat if I didn't say you can get them on Greyston.com as well, and that's a emerging piece of our business around e-commerce and corporate gifts.
Yeah, is that a growing part? Is corporate gifts direct sales?
Yeah, yeah. The food marketplace is changing tremendously, and kind of all the story that we've been talking about. I believe we've got a lot of traction around our story aligning with corporations and the ability to deliver great gifts. So it's high on our list, and we're continuing to work at that business. But much like our traditional business, it's not easy, and it's the blocking and tackling of straight up business issues that we need to improve on to make us more effective.
Right. So let's pretend. Let's do another sort of hypothetical. I'm a CEO of a company who says to you, hey Mike, I'd love to implement open hiring. One, should I start open hiring first and then create the support programs as I go, or should I create the support programs and then focus on hiring? So what do you tell people who are saying they want to institute open hiring, and what's the sort of order of operations that you found to work pretty well?
Yep, we are doing a lot of that, and if I could say, the thing that's really getting me excited now is thinking about our model at scale, and more broadly, social innovation at scale, and how do you do that? And so that question comes up quite a bit, and there's probably a bunch of different ways to do it, and what my general advice is try to get started. And as simple as that is, it's you may have jobs available, and then I would say start with a job because you've got one available. If you don't have one available, then I would say think about what kind of program you want to put into place, and we would help and how we help is to say you need to think about the child care services in your community, and not so much. It's again important to focus on the business, which is you want the team member that comes in and takes that open hiring job to be successful, and that's why you want to offer childcare. But you also want that person to be around for a long time. And if you need to change the schedule, or if you need to make adjustments to a production plan, and you're not allowing people to have a childcare solution that has them drop kids off, they're ultimately going to miss days and have issues that are going to cause them to get fired. And they might be a terrific worker, but it's just the way it is in many production facilities, and certainly in retail, where there's an expectation people come to work. So it's really the basis of your business being successful that you want to have some of these support structures at least known or working to be in place, so that the workers that you do bring in are effective. And honestly, that's not unique to open hiring, but it is necessary to make a low-wage worker effective.
Yes, so childcare sounds like one of the first, at least not necessarily that the company itself would provide it, which I guess would be ideal, but just to even have options for folks. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. It's to know what the options are, and to not have unrealistic expectations. If there aren't options for affordable childcare, this is what's going to happen. The people are going to have trouble when you change their shifts or change their schedule unexpectedly. If you can't do what Greyston does or what we're talking about relative to childcare, then maybe you need to make sure you're adjusting schedules or thinking about those positions in a different way.
And from your experience, is there state assistance for starting some of these like, for example, say if I had a company and I want to do open hiring, and I'm talking to you and I'm saying, hey, I should be thinking about childcare, I should be thinking about affordable housing, workforce development. Are there programs? I mean, it's going to differ from state to state, but are there programs that you found that can help you then get that resource without having to sort of start from scratch?
We want to believe that within every community there's child care support networks for people in low-income situations. I'm not an expert enough to say that that's true, certainly in most major metropolitan areas, but we don't want to limit this certainly to major metropolitan areas. We want to understand how this could work in rural areas also. And so that's some of the work that we're looking at relative to how we scale this and encourage other business leaders to use it. relative to grants and all that, that is a state by state and a national opportunity for business leaders to think about how they can go after that.
Right. And do you train? One of the folks I had on early in this podcast was Ari Weinswag from Zingerman's, and they're pretty famous now for. Actually, he was just out here in San Francisco training Heath Ceramics and Buy Right Market on visioning. And so do you see Greyston as a potential business model, as sort of like a Greyston Training Institute on open hiring? Is that in the works?
I love it, Ryan. Yes, and I love Ari and Zingerman's is an amazing model, and we are really, respect what they've done and what they're continuing to do, and I'd like to do the same. Absolutely.
All right. But any plans to actually do it, or just more of like, yes, intentionally, that's a direction?
We do have plans.
Is this a secret announcement that I'm touching into?
I'm trying to be coy and keep it to myself, but not because I don't want to share it, but I just want to make sure, when we launch and are in a place to be successful, that we do it well. Yeah. And so there are a lot of assets at Greyston that we're putting into play to do that. And I'm grateful that people think about it like you just did, Ryan, because it means organizations want to move in that direction. And frankly, the massive numbers of re-entering citizens that don't get job opportunities and then return to jail because they haven't really been given a true opportunity to be contributors in society is a real problem for our country. And we need people to think about open hiring, whether it's a derivative of what we do. We certainly don't think people have to do it just like we do, but we want to be an enabler, and we want to teach and train organizations absolutely on how they can think about it and integrate it into their businesses.
We spoke about, before we started recording, we spoke a little bit about how you were in consulting, and I'm currently consulting. And I'm not saying you should have an answer for this, but one of the challenges just talking to business owners currently, they're saying, man, I'm having a hard time just hiring people, just quote unquote normal or sort of no barriers to employment people, and finding the right fit. And so do you ever get pushback from folks saying, look, I'd love to do open hiring, but it's just I'm trying to just hire the sort of average people for my job?
Yeah. Absolutely hear that as well. And there's now the situation too where the economy is doing pretty well, and so people are not as available at the same pace they were, which means we need to think about how to actually provide jobs to those in the community, unfortunately, that are considered unemployable. And why our model and the work we want to do, which is you're having a hard time finding good people, here's a process that we know delivers great people to your floor, in all sorts of businesses. So let's use it, and it's going to solve your problem, and it's also going to solve a problem in the community.
Yeah. And so I guess this may tap into what you may be launching in the near future, but are there any current resources for folks? Has there been any, I looked a lot on your website, any case studies or documents that folks could say, hey, I'd love to sort of have a checklist or a sort of overview of the steps I should be thinking about?
Yep. Not so easily available, like you said, but we're going to be working to change that. I'm always open, and when I say it on most every talk, if people want to get a hold of me or write to info@greyston.com, we can support as much as possible the interest in trying to do things, but we're quickly getting to a point where we want to be able to have things that are downloadable and make it much easier for people. And then I guess I'll turn the tables and say, if people want to get involved, yourself, Ryan, I know your team does great work on helping us to scale this out. We need that kind of help as well.
Yeah, I love it. My background is actually prior to my life as a sort of green nerd or B Corp nerd, I was a criminal justice. My background's in psychology and criminal justice. So, the cycle of recidivism and, the problem with the criminal justice system is something I'm quite familiar with. So this is actually a great sort of transition, dovetails with my previous training. So this is super
Yeah.
super interesting.
Yeah, and that's great, and we're finding a lot of that. And so our future strategy and where we're working towards is to try to harness the expertise of people like yourselves to say, hey, come and work with us at Greyston, help us to scale this model, help us to improve the model, and get it to a point where people hear of open hiring, they understand what it is, and they're working towards it within their organization, or at least are envisioning how it could happen in the future.
Yeah. I heard a good quote the other day about the value of showing our scars and sort of also talking about what doesn't work in a way, just because I think one of the reasons some people I've spoken to about open hiring may be like, well, I'm a little skeptical, is because they also don't really know what some of the mistakes are, what goes wrong. I mean, and that's probably something you'll address in some content. It sounds like you're creating, but are there sort of mistakes or key learnings that you think companies who are thinking about this should be aware of to kind of keep their eye on?
Uh, I'm going to answer it in two ways, because the other aspect that people are also skeptical about, which is, oh my God, this must be such a pain and so crazy, and it's not. We don't have a record of theft. We don't have a record of violent behavior. Zero, in fact. The facility is just like any others, and it's part of the bias. I think when I tell people what I do, that they immediately have some mindset that says, "Wow, that just must be a crazy place where you work," when it's not. It's a 100% highly functioning business. The other piece then, to kind of directly answer your question, which is, you need to be deliberate about the process. There is obviously a change that takes place in your culture when you say we want to help people that need a helping hand, and make sure there's champions involved, because there's going to be integrating it within your organization, as we have been having these conversations, will come across objections, and you need to have champions that say, no, this is absolutely what we want to do, and it's great for our business because it's going to drive ROI, it's going to drive positive response from our employee base, and it's going to help the community.
And and the marketing, Dion Drew says it so well, and for folks who don't know, Mike's TED Talk, hiring the unemployable, with his is he bakery manager, or what's Dion's title?
Yep, Dion at the time was our head trainer, and now he's an assistant manager.
Yeah,
It's a great
so
story.
Mike Brady and Dion Drew, check out the TED Talk, hiring the unemployable. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so is there a model? You mentioned low wage workers. Is there a model or an ideal? Is this better suited for manufacturing companies, or do you know any service companies that have implemented this model, just for folks who are interested?
I don't know anyone that's done our model straight up like ours, and now kind of alluded to, there's organizations we're working to with it. I think it's applicable across any range of businesses. It's certainly easily understood in manufacturing, where there are standard entry-level jobs where people can come in and get trained and perform the jobs. But when I speak to folks at, say, Google, and they're like, how does this apply to what I'm saying? I'm saying, ask yourself, who's doing my janitorial work, and who's working in my kitchen, and who's doing the mailroom jobs that might be able to be in the open hiring range. And we're working to explore more and more of those jobs across the entire spectrum to say, here's some really easy, low-hanging fruit where we can start bringing people in with different kind of backgrounds.
Right, and even for the Google example, it could be starting them off maybe in the kitchen and then giving them some coding training, getting them to be coders.
Yep, I love it. That's exactly the process and what we do at Greyston, which is, there's a lot of paths forward. Some are within Greyston, but many of them are outside of Greyston. And we like to say that a real success story is not when someone gets a job at Greyston, but when they get a job outside of Greyston.
Right. I love it. Yeah, I talked to the folks from Cascade Engineering, who I'm sure you're familiar with, within the B Corp community.
Yeah.
And they're sort of I love the way they framed it. It's a lot of folks who work for Cascade are originally on welfare, and it's not a welfare to job. They call it welfare to career because they want to prepare people for a career that's purposeful and helps them learn and grow. So I think there's this sort of bias towards, oh, we should just give low wage workers any job, but it's like if you kind of craft it towards like what is a career that's towards learning and growing, I think it's probably going to be much more successful.
Yeah, they do amazing work, and we believe the same thing. I don't want people to leave Greyston for a job that's worse than the future if they were to stay at Greyston. It needs to be something better.
Yeah. So what if we pivot slightly to this? I asked some of the CEOs on this podcast, just on the larger picture. You were a consultant too, so here's my cheesy consulting question: is what are the top 2 to 3 things that keep you up at night about Greyston?
Yeah. I'd say it's somewhat perhaps ironic, but it's finding good people. We're growing in a lot of ways. We're growing our bakery business, and we're growing on the nonprofit side in our programs and the work you were alluding to around how do we train and support other organizations. And I need to find managers or leaders that can help me run these programs that understand the importance of our business and how we want to scale open hiring, and then also do it in a mission-based way with the same kind of compassion and commitment to our heritage that I have and our other leaders do. So we're constantly looking for smart people that can join the team. That's one big one, and I'd say the other one is pace of change. And I've been, as I alluded to earlier, so grateful for this opportunity because there is so much interest in Greyston, and at all levels, from real serious leaders within Unilever to other Fortune 150s to the government. I had the amazing opportunity to go to the White House 3 weeks ago as part of the Fair Chance Business Pledge, and I want to make real change, and I think there is the opportunity to do that. I need to make sure I manage the pace that we execute on it effectively for the organization, and not miss opportunities for us to really make impact, and that kind of thing keeps me up at night.
Wow, now I can tell you're a real business that has similar problems to any other business. How do I hire the best people, and then how do I manage change? I mean, that's actually reaffirming.
Yeah, there you go. Good.
Well, great. Did you get to meet President Obama or?
Yeah, I was with the Attorney General, and I thought the president may have shown up, but he didn't come for that. But it was a great day anyway.
Fantastic. Yeah. So looking towards the future, what I also like to ask this question to folks is, where do you see, what's the 25, 50, or, Yvonne Schoenar, like say, what's the 100-year plan for Greyston? Do you see the Greyston bakery in every state that's sort of, doing its model, or do you see it sort of, staying within New York, but, the actual model is within different companies, or, what's sort of the change that you want to see in the sort of 25 to 100-year term?
100 years is a long time. Yeah. That's for sure. But in my lifetime, I hope there's a lot more equity in the world, and the acceptance of poverty globally is getting a lot of attention. I think we need to look at it in our backyard and really ask ourselves why so many people struggle with finding food and getting good jobs and being employed and being able to be contributors in the community. I want in my lifetime for that to be very different. And my contribution to that, I hope, is to provide a tool around open hiring that can inspire business leaders to say, look, I'll do my part by lifting up a portion of the community that over the last 50 years has really been suffering, and trying to make it easier and easier for business leaders to do it. And then I hope there's enough other players out there that are going to say this poverty situation and the struggles of 1/6 of our nation is unacceptable, and I'm going to make change as well.
And so do you see Greyston, San Francisco in the future, or is it is this a New York business? Do you think?
I'd love to see Greyston, San Francisco. So I'll put that call out there as well. But I'd much rather see, and I shouldn't say much rather. I would also like to see 100% of the organizations in San Francisco practicing open hiring in the next 15 years.
Right.
And if it's 1-2 jobs, 1-2% of the workforce, but everyone is practicing it.
Fantastic. Who else are you watching? One of the questions, that we found to be valuable for us, sort of, and to listeners, is who do you look for inspiration?
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey here at Greyston with the exposure we've been getting, and it's I'd encourage people to, if they're interested, to check out my Twitter feed. It's at the Mike Brady, but just see who I'm following. Because when I get asked that, I look back and I say, who are the guys that and women that are saying things that I'm really interested in? And leaders like Darren Walker right now of Ford Foundation is really looking at systematic change and social change at a massive level, which is interesting to me. And then I'm not sure if you know Nick Temple over in the UK. Social Enterprise UK is doing some really interesting work, and the UK is advanced relative to what we're doing in the US. And I had the good fortune meeting Nick a month or so ago, and since then they had launched their corporate challenge over in the UK, where they got a commitment from corporations to do £1 billion worth of business by 2020 with other social enterprises. And I think that's awesome. I think that's kind of massive thinking about how to drive social enterprise, much like Greyston and Ben & Jerry's and Unilever within the supply chain. And I really like that. Some of the other things that Aaron Hurst is doing around the purpose economy, I find really engaging also.
What is the book you most often give as a gift?
Instructions to the Cook.
Oh yeah, what is that? What is that book?
That is the Bernie Glassman story for starting Greyston.
Oh.
And it's an awesome book, and it uses his philosophy around socially engaged Buddhism to explain how business can drive social change and the importance of social justice. And I think it's a great read.
Fantastic. Last few questions here. What do people never ask you that you wish they did?
What do people ask me? Oh, now you're really getting into the questions. People. How do I want to phrase that? Because the story, and you kind of asked it, of how I got to Greyston, is a good one. I think there's another question in that is, why did you give up on your old career? And it gets to something I bring up when I'm talking often with students, which is, the brain drain that goes into jobs that might be really useful but aren't contributing positively to community is something we really need to think about. And how can we use the resources of young people's brains, and really anybody, to apply to real problem solving at a much greater scale, is something I would like to have happen. And at some point in my career, I said, look, I'm not interested in doing another meeting around digital advertising. I want to do some different stuff.
Right. It's being here near Silicon Valley, one of the quotes is the best minds of our time are going to creating better Facebook ads.
Right.
So
right. You guys hear it.
I'm in agreement with your statement. Great. Well, how can so any other requests for the audience? What do you need? I mean, evangelizing the open hiring model is clearly a request. I hear. How can folks continue to help you sort of push this mission forward?
Yeah. Thank you for that opportunity. And there's a real need for additional corporate partners to embrace this model and to commit to it from where we are right now, which is still working through a process of making it easy, and making it seamless. So we want to be able to say, let's just get at it with a couple folks that are going to be committed to this. So if any of your listeners are there saying, wow, I'd really love to do this, and I know Mike is not quite ready with my checklist, but I'm going to call him up and I'm going to ask him how, where we are right now can be of best value. And I bet I could put that kind of interest to work. And the same would go for professors or students or economists that want to work with me to study how we can improve this and prove with a real tangible ROI that this makes great sense for every business. That's what we're working forward with at a real pace.
And it sounds like info@greyston.com. Is that the correct email?
Exactly. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah. So folks, whoever's interested, either purchasing brownies directly, I highly recommend the Blondie for folks who are interested in a different experience of a brownie, but amazing.
I know my fundraising team's gonna kick me too. They say I should say go to our website and donate.
Oh yeah.
We can always use the donations, and if you don't want to donate, buy lots of our brownies.
Next Economy Now is a production of Lift Economy. To listen to all of our episodes, go to lifteconomy.com/podcast. That's LIFT economy.com/podcast. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter at lifteconomy.com/newsletter. Please also rate and review our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.